terrible scenes, didn't we, on Saturday in Liga MX when Queretaro and Atlas faced off against each other. The game was abandoned in the 63rd minute after a brawl that broke out in the stands. Saw fans basically fleeing to the field. For more on this, we're joined by Sabastian Salazar. Seb, what really struck me about this story is the fact there seems to be so many different reports coming out about the number of injuries, about the number of people who've been seriously hurt. Can you clear any of this up?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, it's important to kind of say where we are with what's happened since the incident, right? The league went out and banned the barras, the supporters groups, from traveling to away games. Today we find out that they are going to play match day 10 pretty much as scheduled, with the one exception of Querétaro. They're supposed to play on Friday night, and their fate as a club right now very much hangs in the balance. We can get into that a little bit later on. What we do know, and maybe it's important to start with there first, local authorities have just recently, in the last few hours, announced 15 arrest warrants for those involved. However, here we are almost 48 hours from the incident, and still no arrests have been made. And as you mentioned, I think what is confusing people the most is that as of right now, we have no official report from any official channel of any deaths at this event. However, there are multiple journalists now in Mexico who are claiming that there were deaths either at La Corregidora, which is where Querétaro plays, or just outside the stadium. So I think it's safe to say that the next 24 to 48 hours are going to be really decisive here, Dan, as that news continues to filter out and break.
And people maybe who haven't seen it, like speculating, well, why is there the assumption that there were deaths? And I think anyone who saw those videos who were just horrific that were coming out on Saturday, that's why people are connecting those dots, Seb.
Yeah, obviously the videos, not that were broadcast, right, not that were transmitted, but what's happening in these stadiums now is everybody is a news gatherer and everybody has a phone. So the videos that came out from cell phones are horrifically graphic. It's also worth, Dan, noting here that there is a long history in Mexico of misinformation when it comes to events like this. You can go back to the 60s, violence against students. You can go back much more recently, violence against activists. And the Mexican government has not always covered itself in glory when it comes to spreading the truth about what's happening in those events. So you mix the video that we saw and the history in Mexico of misinformation, and I think that's why you're getting a lot of people that don't believe what we're hearing right now from the state authorities and from the Mexican League, which is that no one died in these horrific events.
Could we see Querétaro kicked out of the league, Seb?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tuesday morning, there's going to be an emergency meeting of the Liga MX owners, and I think the question is not whether they're going to get kicked out, it's for how long, right? Will they be able to come back after a one-year ban? Or is this the end of Querétaro as we know it? And right now, the early reports, again, this meeting will take place tomorrow, is that already the owners, the other owners of Liga MX clubs are looking at banning Querétaro for good. So that would mean Querétaro out of Liga MX for an indefinite period of time, if not forever. I think there's also a greater concern, Dan, for Mexican soccer. I mean, if you look at kind of comparable events, and you hate to compare tragedies, but you can go back to what happened in 2012 in Egypt. The league didn't play for 2 years after that. Now, that was governmental decisions, but the league itself disappeared for 2 years. If you want to go back to the 1985 European Cup final, Liverpool-Juventus, Liverpool, not just Liverpool, all English clubs missed continental competition for 5 years. So if we go back and look at prior precedent, it's not just Querétaro that could be in a lot of trouble here. Mexican football as a whole, I think, has a lot to be worried about.
Mexico, of course, supposed to be hosting some World Cup matches in 2026. Does this have any sort of effect on that, Seb?
I mean, what we're hearing right now out of Mexico is that, like, FIFA and CONCACAF, because this was a Liga MX event, don't necessarily have the jurisdiction to go in and address that. But I think the reality is this. FIFA's going to have to look at this, and really CONCACAF is going to have to look at it much sooner. We've got MLS teams coming down here going down to Mexico for CONCACAF Champions League in the next week. We've got the U.S. playing Mexico in a World Cup qualifier in Mexico City on March 24th. We got the CONCACAF Champions Women's Championship coming up later this summer in Monterrey. And as you mentioned, not just the upcoming World Cup, but 2026, which at least a few games are supposed to be hosted in Mexico. Right now for Mexican soccer, there's a lot of events, a lot of things that stand to be lost if FIFA does intervene. So I think right now there are events kind of in the short term, Dan, that Mexico needs to be worried about keeping. But absolutely, I don't know how FIFA can turn a blind eye to this looking ahead to 2026.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and of course, ESPN FC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.